So I would imagine that it was tough sledding then in the beginning, because you didn't know you were creating your own future. You had it maybe imagined, but you didn't have it validated yet by the market. You had to tell them what was important. Were there times where maybe your investors were saying it's putting pressure on you to pivot or go a different way, or talk about that?
Well, I faced, I would say, enormous stress and anxiety
Yeah,
really leading up to starting the company. So call it in 2011 to 2012. And then for the first, 3, 4 years of building the company,
yeah,
I felt enormous insecurity and anxiety around building this business. Because you have to understand, I wasn't just building Whoop, I was building Will. Like, who am I? What am I doing running this thing?
yeah.
Right.
We should also underscore your age at this time. So it's not to be underestimated. I mean, age is a number. It's all about your skills, your knowledge, but there's a point where wisdom or life experience comes into play. I mean, how old were you at the time? So it's
I was 22.
yeah, I mean, 2012.
Yeah.
You're still a young man
Yeah.
figuring out who he is. Your brain's not even fully developed, right? You've got 2 or 3 more years until that even
Right.
happens, and you're struggling with running this little startup that's got massive ambition, but you don't know whether it's going to go or not. That must have been incredibly difficult.
It was. And
How did you do that?
yeah, there were certain coping mechanisms that I had then that I think you want to learn to overcome or evolve past. One coping mechanism was I really put up pretty strong barriers to feedback. I mean, I didn't even hear what people were saying.
Okay, interesting.
And I wouldn't recommend that, by the way. That came from a place of insecurity, and it came from a place of not being able to cope with uh, just how negative the feedback I was getting was.
Yeah,
Because I was getting a lot of feedback that sort of seems natural in hindsight. What does a 22-year-old who isn't an engineer know about building this technology?
right.
You're going to build something that no one in the market is actually asking for. You're going to target a very small market. We just heard Nike's coming out with a product. We heard Apple's about to come out with a product. Like, this is what I would hear
Yeah,
pretty much every time I went to pitch the company.
yeah,
And frankly, it was pretty demoralizing.
yeah.
If the more I let it seep in.
Well, yeah, the two behemoths in the market, right?
Yeah.
And so, what year did Apple Watch come out?
It would have been probably 2015.
Yeah, so I mean, you're 2 or 3 years into this.
But it was well known it was coming out years before.
Of course,
The
yeah,
Fuel Band came out in 2013, and so that was like a year into building the company.
yeah. So that was like, oof.
Adidas came out in 2014. Under Armour spent $1 billion. Kevin Plank was on the cover of Forbes saying that wearable and digital health was the future of the company.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. So, but you were able to weather that storm by basically putting blinders on, or, you know, tuning it out.
Yeah, there was an important, I think, tipping point for me around age 24, 25. At that point, I had raised tens of millions of dollars. I had gotten good at selling the story, and I truly believed it. Right? It wasn't like I was faking that. I was very clear about why this should exist, why it was inevitable it was going to exist, and why I thought we could build it. But it was taking a lot longer to create the technology, and especially to have the technology be ready to go to market. And so, I'd raised tens of millions of dollars. The team was maybe 20, 30 people. But just the size of that money and the number of people who worked in an organization I was responsible for, it felt like the weight of the world on my
Of
shoulders,
course,
right?
yeah.
And so I was very strung out. I wasn't sleeping well. I was drinking too much. Like, I didn't know how to cope with all of it. And I had a panic attack at one point during that phase. And so I started to really lean into what are ways that I can learn to better manage myself. If you're listening to this and you're wondering how you can get your business to the next level, it may be that you need to figure out how you can get yourself to the next level. And that was really important for me because I was spiraling out of control. And by the way, from the outside in, I probably looked fine, right?
Sure.
That's the other thing about being an entrepreneur. It's a little chaotic. But around that time period, I learned how to meditate. And that really helps me start looking at myself in a very different way. It allowed me to look at myself much more introspectively. It allowed me to move past this sort of barriers that I had put up to feedback and noise and negativity. I remember an advisor saying to me, you know, Will, you don't have to listen to everyone's feedback, but you should try to hear it.
Okay.
And that was a helpful framing again, where it's like, you want to make sure you're wrestling with this information that you're getting. You want to make sure that you are able to constantly be asking yourself, why do you feel so strongly about what you feel?
Right.
Right. And almost second guessing yourself, but in a healthy way, having a conversation with yourself. So all of that happened around the ages of 24, 25. I still meditate every single day since. So it became a practice in my life that I'm obsessed with. And my evolution as an entrepreneur was, yes, keep the blinders on. Yes, stay focused. But I think I became a much more open and accessible person to work with.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go from having 30 employees to 500, you really have to evolve how you operate as a manager or a leader.
Yeah, it makes me think of a couple things. Again, I want to underscore some of these lessons that I'm hearing from you. One is this idea that, you know, you just sort of described going through hell and back emotionally, maybe even physically. And there's only one way to really get experience, and that's just to do it, right? The only reason I have calluses right here is because I've been doing pull-ups. And you can't fake being good at pull-ups.
True.
You just have to do them.